It is your Tuesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back in the big chair for another day. Hope you guys are all having a good one out there. Stay as cool as possible. I know we maybe talk a little bit too much about the weather sometimes in this opening few minutes, but man, it's supposed to be 100 degrees today, 100 degrees tomorrow. That is not, that's not weather you want to be out in. Generally speaking, I'm just thankful that the state fair hasn't happened yet. It's not going to be part of this. Speaking of the fair, I'll be out there quite a bit. I think I mentioned this to Royce the other day when we were talking, but I'll be out there for probably 3 or 4 days, bunch of appearances on the Star Tribune stage. Once all those things are solidified, I'll make sure to promote those properly. But yeah, look for me and other Star Tribune folks out at the State Fair starting Thursday and beyond, when hopefully it's not 100 degrees. Good show today, I should say, as well. Chip Scoggins will join me here in just a little bit, Star Tribune columnist. Wanted to pick his brain on Mark Coyle. There was an interesting report on Monday that Coyle had been vetted, one of the candidates who had been vetted as the possible replacement for the USC athletic director job. Now, that story lasted about 4 hours because later Monday, USC announced it had named a new athletic director, and it was not Mark Coyle, it was Washington's athletic director. But Chip and I will take it, Chip and I talked after all that happened, and I thought it was just an interesting point to kind of evaluate Mark Coyle's place in the kind of athletic director ecosystem and evaluate the job he has done here at Minnesota in the 7 years since he's been here. So Chip and I will take a look at that, as well as look ahead to the Gophers football opener, which is next week, coming up fast on us there. Got a wild NBA story at the end of the show and some Twins stuff here in a few minutes. First, though, what did I miss? I want to spend a little time on the curious case of Vikings tight end T.J. Hockenson, who's been out for pretty much most of training camp with what he described last week as an ear infection. He's been sitting out all contact drills since August 3rd. So yeah, almost getting close to 3 weeks now that he has been sitting out. So it's been messing with his equilibrium. He talked to reporters again on Monday. And my suspicion before he talked to reporters was, man, is T.J. Hockenson holding in? Now, this is like kind of a fairly new term. The NFL has kind of clamped down on the idea of a contract holdout now. I believe it's a $50,000 fine per day, and you can't give that money back if a player holds out of camp looking for a new contract. Hockenson acquired by the Vikings in the middle of last season. He's in the final year of his rookie deal right now, looking for a contract extension. I would think that is a no-brainer given what they gave up for him last year, given how productive he was last year. 10 games last year. They targeted him 86 times during the regular season. He had 60 catches for 519 yards. That is very good production out of a tight end. I don't think this is a matter of are they going to sign Hockenson to an extension? It's a matter of when, and it hasn't happened yet. So one thing a player can do when they are seeking a new deal, when it hasn't happened yet, is they can quote-unquote hold in. You show up to camp, you do all the meetings, you do some of the walkthrough stuff, but you don't expose yourself to an injury risk while you are waiting for that new contract. So if that's what Hockenson is doing, and it kind of seems like he is, then that's kind of where we are with him. And now he talked to reporters on Monday, and this only helped to confirm my suspicions and maybe the suspicions of some others that he is in fact holding in. Here is a little segment. I wasn't there, but here's a little segment that was posted on the Vikings YouTube page. We did have our own Star Tribune reporters there as well, but this was from the Vikings YouTube page. Hockenson talking to reporters just kind of about where he's at right now.
Yeah, it's gotten better. Yeah, it's gotten better. I mean, like I say, we're just taking it slow and get me ready for the season and get me ready for Sundays. I'm just looking forward to be out here with these guys. I just love them to death. Love being in this locker room, and these guys are incredible.
As physical as you are, does it frustrate you that an ear infection is sidelining you this long?
I mean, yeah, I am a physical person. I'm a physical player, so we'll transition that to Sundays when it comes around.
Did you expect Sunday night?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be ready by then for sure. That's the goal, and that's where we'll be. Just looking forward to it.
Do you expect to do any work this week in the joint sessions or no?
I don't know. It just all depends. I'm taking it day by day. So.
Now, you can't see it, of course, this is audio only, but he was smiling a couple times at some of those questions, almost like this is a little cat and mouse game, like he kind of knows what's going on. We should all know what's going on. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And that's fine. It's just kind of a funny space we're in right now, where if you can't hold out, you've got to kind of go through this song and dance of I'm here, but I'm not really here. I'm just here not to get fined, essentially. The Marshawn Lynch story. I don't know. Maybe he really is still suffering the effects of an ear infection. Maybe he's going to have to get ready for that. But it does sound like he's very confident that he's going to be ready to go once the lights come on in a few weeks for the regular season opener. So I guess if you were worried about Hockenson, thinking this might be a lingering injury, it sounds like more of a case of contractitis, and that as soon as they figure out his contract, this should all be settled. Let's talk Twins for a minute here, too, before we get to Chip Scoggins. They embark on what I would say is the toughest stretch of their post-All-Star break schedule, or at least the stretch in which they have the most to potentially lose. 15 games here coming up against the Brewers. They've got 2 against the Brewers, and then 4 against Texas, 3 against Cleveland, then 3 at Texas, and then 3 more at Cleveland. A 15-game stretch where Milwaukee's a good team. They're above 500. They're kind of like the Twins this year. Texas is great this year. Texas has been one of the best teams in the American League right now. They're battling for that AL West title and certainly a playoff spot, 72-53 going into Tuesday's play. And then the Guardians, of course, not having a good season, but they are the nearest challenger to the Twins in the AL Central. They are 6 games back, 59-66. And again, Cleveland not having a good season, but this is Cleveland's chance. Cleveland has 6 games against the Twins in the next 2 weeks. This is their chance to make up any ground. Now, Twins comfortably in the lead. Like I said, 6 games with 37 games left in the season. Fangraphs projects the Twins to win the AL Central by 8 or 9 games over Cleveland, 10 games over Detroit, like a very comfortable finish. They're saying 95.5% chance to make the postseason, to win the division. 4% chance to win the World Series. I'll take that, you guys. I think you probably would too. But just watch these next 2 weeks. Lavelle and I talked about this last week. If there's going to be a stretch where this could get a little bit uncomfortable, this is it, because you got to play Texas a whole bunch. If you slip up there, then those games against Cleveland become even more magnified. You've got to do your business against Cleveland. You got to be at least kind of playing 3-3, 500 ball in those 6 games against Cleveland, so you're not allowing them to put a dent in your lead, and you got to maintain something against Texas. If they can come out of this 15-game stretch with roughly the lead they have right now, or even if they can expand on it, then I think we can just put this thing to bed and say, okay, this thing is over. They're going to run it out to the end, and they're going to be in the postseason. But if this thing is going to get uncomfortable, it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. So just pay attention to that. Watch where this lead is after these 2 against Milwaukee and that 13-game stretch against Texas and Cleveland, both home and away, because that could very well determine how comfortable September is for the Twins.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to mgmwineandspirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Bring in Star Tribune columnist Chip Scoggins right now. Couple things on my mind today, Chip. One of them was a story that was about a 4-hour story on Monday, because LA Times publishes kind of an FAQ style look at USC's AD search, and they list 3 people that they know that have been vetted as possible candidates for that vacancy, which has been open for 3 months. And Mark Coyle, Gophers AD, is one of the three people they list that they know from multiple sources that had been at least evaluated and vetted by USC for their opening now. And I think Coyle would have mentioned maybe as a candidate at the beginning of the search by a couple of hey, here are the 10 people to watch, things like that. Now, the story ends up fizzling out quickly because USC makes an announcement, Monday afternoon that they've made their hire. They hired Jennifer Cohen from Washington, their AD. So, there's no legs to the story beyond that. But it felt like it was a good opportunity, Chip, to kind of pause and say, wow, Mark Coyle is being looked at in that way. What did you make of just USC's potential interest and why they might be interested in someone like Mark Coyle?
Yeah, I looked at it for a couple reasons why it would make sense for them to vet Mark as a candidate. One, they're going to be a Big Ten colleague here starting next year. And so you would have someone who has been in the Big Ten for 7 years and knows the landscape and knows how the conference operates. So that would be attractive. Two, Mark has had to deal with a number of crises in his tenure. He walked into the football boycott. Jay Robinson, I think he had to suspend his first day on the job. The wrestling coach.
That's right, yeah.
And so there's been other things that have come up that he's had to deal with. And I think most people would agree that the way the program's run is in a respectful manner, and he's handled those situations and got the department going the right way. And USC obviously is a mess right now. If I don't know if people know the background with their AD and all the things that have gone on. A lot of drama, a lot of crisis there. And so I think he would be a good fit in terms of someone who's been through some of the fires and have dealt with, tough circumstances. So I think that would be an attractive thing to him. I think people look at PJ Fleck from a national perspective. I know locally people probably have a different opinion than national, but I think most people nationally look at that and say, he's done a good job at Minnesota. He won 9 games, however many years in a row, and he hired PJ. And so I think all those things would be a reason why they would want to have him on their list as someone to investigate. I'm not sure the fit would be ideal. Mark still reminds me kind of a Midwest guy.
Yeah.
He talked about how much Minnesota was the one job that he left Syracuse after 1 year, and this is the one job he would do that for because he considers it home. He's worked here before. His kids go to high school here. He had a daughter graduate from the U. And so there's a lot of reasons why the Midwest and Minnesota in particular makes sense for him. But I think just the profile and what he would bring would make him an attractive candidate for them.
Now, I guess it just surprised me a little bit because I've never gotten the sense that he has another move in him just because he has said so many things about the Gophers, because he's been here for 7 years, because he does seem like he's got roots here. That said, when, for all the mess that there is at USC, when you see a school like that take a look at someone who's here, you say, okay, well, is that how he's viewed elsewhere? And how would you kind of assess, you know him better than I do, and how would you think of what he's thinking about his, where he stands right now with Minnesota, things that he likes about the job and may not like about the job that may, make us have to say, well, is this a possibility that he could leave at some point?
Well, I look at it a lot like a coach would. Is USC a step up in football? Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're PJ Fleck, if USC offered, that's a step up from what he has. And so, sure. USC is still a high-profile school. I don't know, all about their donations and all the things that the donor pool there that they have. But, there's challenges at Minnesota, no doubt. I think we all know that with the competition that the Gopher Athletic Department faces in this market with corporations and trying to get corporate dollars and trying to get people to spend their money on Gopher sports and not the Vikings or the Wild or whatever. There's just unique challenges that only a few schools have in that regard in terms of a major university in a pro market. So there's that. He's had a lot of changeover at the president's office. Yeah, they're going through it again. He's going to have an interim now that President Gable's gone. They have an interim for 1 year, and while they conduct a search, so he's going to have a new boss. This will be his third full-time president, if you count the interim.
Hired by Kaler, right? And then yeah.
So that's a lot of changeover. So does that mean he's restless and looking to get out? I don't know that. Not that he would share that with me, if he
course,
was.
Right.
Obviously, he's a very, I would say, private, very behind the scenes AD. I don't know that would work at USC. I don't know if it work at a lot of places.
Yeah.
He's chosen. What's the saying? I've heard him say a million times. I had lunch with him a couple weeks ago. And he told me the same thing again. It's like low ego, high output.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want the spotlight on him. He prefers to do his work behind the scenes. Sometimes that's frustrating because you want to hear from him more and have more access to him, but that's just who he is. He's more comfortable behind the scenes than being on a stage and being the face of an athletic department in a way that a lot of athletic directors are. So I still think for him to leave, it would have to be an obvious step up. And Mike, they're paying him $1 million a year.
Yeah.
This is, you're in the Power 2 conference. You're the TV money that's coming in is going to be, I think, starting point $75 million per year.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to go backwards if you're the athletic director and be in one of these conferences that's falling apart. That's that's scrambling to find TV deals. So I think it'd have to take the right situation for him to leave. And to me, a lot of it would be about fit.
Yeah.
And I just think he has the right fit here.
I think we talked about this before we started recording, and I'll ask you about it now. If you had to put like a grade, and maybe a grade doesn't involve enough of a gray area to make a complete evaluation, but if you put a grade on his little over 7 years that he's been here, what grade would you give him for his performance as an AD?
Yeah, I would give him a B. I think he's done a good job. He's hired, you look at I can't think of off the top of my head, but how many coaches he's hired. We know the high profile ones, but even in the Olympic sports, he's had to do a lot of hiring too. But you hired PJ Fleck, you hired Bob Motzko, you hired Keegan Cook, the new volleyball coach. The knocks on him are he took a gamble on Lindsey Whalen, and that didn't work out. He's taken a gamble on Ben Johnson, a young coach who hadn't been a head coach. That hasn't worked out so far. It's still the final chapter on Ben's has not been written, and he's going to get at least another year to see if he can turn it around. But in terms of, if you look at a holistic approach, academically, the things that the department's doing in terms of facilities, in terms of what athletes are doing in the community, I think, that's a reflection of the AD, because he sets the tone and hires the coaches that require these things. You'd think even the critics would say he's done a good job in those areas. So I would say a solid B. I think you said maybe a B plus, and I wouldn't argue that, but just the two basketball hires he hasn't gotten right yet. I do think his new hire, Dawn, on the women's side, she strikes me as very sharp, and I think she's going to do a good job based on everything I've seen. Now she has to prove it. But he needs Ben to win here, because they need basketball to be successful financially for financial reasons, obviously, to go with just, fielding a competitor, your second most profitable sport. You need to start winning.
Well, what's final thought on this? Then I want to transition to some Gopher football talk before we get out of here. What struck me in my last two conversations with him, and it's probably like over the span of a year or so that I've talked to him for interviews or probably for this podcast. Both times he's definitely mentioned how much the job has changed in the last 3 or 4 years with NIL, with transfer portal, with just the mobility of athletes, with TV money. Like the job he took in 2016 is not the job he has in 2023.
No, it is. It's always going to be a stressful job because you're running something with a lot of money and a lot of employees and just the eyeballs that are on big time college sports right now. And I had lunch with him. I try to do it once a year, and I've known Mark for 20 something years. I go back to when I was on the Gopher football beat. He was he ran the marketing department. So I got to know him then. So I've known him a long time. And yeah, I mean, we were talking about it the other day at lunch, is like the NIL, how much of a game changer that is just for college sports. Realignment. I mean, think about what the Big Ten looks like now compared to when he walked into the job. There's 4 new teams, 4 new schools. the TV money, obviously how things are, the demands with facilities to keep pace, coaching contracts, all these things. I mean, there's just so much more intensity with college sports and how fast things can change now compared to, it used to feel like it'd move at glacial pace. Now it's like you wake up one week and all of a sudden you could have 2 new schools joining your conference. I mean, it's nuts. And so trying to keep pace with that as the athletic director, listen to your head coaches talk about the portal and the NIL, and they can't control the NIL because that's supposed to be independent of the athletic department. But let's be honest, they're very heavily invested in their NIL doing well because he will hear about it from his coaches when it's not, and when they lose athletes to other schools because of NIL. So you're constantly trying to grow your department, but also engage the fan base to get them to think about it. It used to be give your money to the donors, give your money here to the athletic department so we can spend it now. Now you're having to say, maybe not give all your money, but give, a big part of your money to this NIL collective so they can give it to the athletes because that's the game that they're playing now. So it's a complete, I don't want to say it's a completely different job, but it's fundamentally changed in the last really 3 years, more so than, So I don't know if that makes him less excited about the job or anything like that, but it definitely is probably add more stress to his life.
Well, and then that's going to be the reality to any school, I suppose, to that new stuff is not unique to Minnesota.
Nope.
But by the way,
everybody.
You also went through a pandemic. I just kind of like, I'm just thinking about his tenure and like everything that has happened. It's not been it's been a lot thrown his way in 7 years.
Well, I'm guessing 7 years probably feels like 77 years. If you think about all
in
all the
AD
stuff he's had
years, it's 11 years for 1 year. It's like dog years,
right.
but AD years. Well,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be clear, in case the point was not made at the beginning, USC has hired an AD. It is not Mark Coyle. I don't know how even serious the candidacy was. This was just maybe a point to pause and kind of think about his tenure right now and just kind of like, if he did leave, and who knows if that's even a possibility, like they would probably have a hard time replacing him with someone who has done as good of a job as he's done. I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's, he's had his hands in a lot of different areas in terms of, one thing he's on now, he's on the NCAA basketball committee that selects the tournament of the field. He's done that last couple of years, but yeah, I mean, he knows the Big Ten. He knows how this landscape has changed with the TV money and the realignment. And so he's gained a lot of institutional knowledge. I would say in 7 years, but Mike, he worked here prior and he stayed in close contact. So it's not like his tenure is just 7 years. I mean, he's known this department for a long time and seen it change and evolve. So, but I can tell you, I've given no indication by, talk to him. I did, the USC thing. It made sense to me, like I said at the beginning, that they would look at him just because of all the factors. And when you say vetting, I assume that means they probably called to gauge his interest.
Figure it out. Yeah.
And I don't know how much it went deeper than that, but I guess I will say it didn't surprise me that he was on their radar.
Yeah, and I don't think it ultimately surprised me that he wasn't the person that they ended up hiring either. So
correct. Yeah.
One thing that can change your opinion of an athletic director for better or for worse awfully quickly is the success or failure of a football team. Yeah. I said, PJ Fleck's Gophers have been good. There was the steady rise, the great year in 2019. The COVID year was kind of a lost season, but they've posted back-to-back 9-win seasons since then. I mean, not quite getting that like one extra win in one of those years that would push it from, great. And, I'd say 2019 was special, but you still could have had one more win in 2019 would have pushed it into a whole new territory. I think any of those last few years, you win one more game, you got a chance to maybe have something special happen that didn't quite happen. But where do you, now that we're, a week away from the season opener and some tough games in the non-conference, just kind of looking at it. I mean, they got the second hardest schedule in the country, according to some projections. Like, how do you how do you see this season and kind of the arc going? Because the schedule is tough this year, and I don't think it gets a whole lot easier in the future once you add USC, UCLA, like when you start playing better Big Ten teams, things like that. It's not going to get any easier, I don't think.
No, you didn't weaken the competition by adding Oregon, Washington, USC.
You really didn't.
It didn't make the road easier. I'll say that. This is year 7 for PJ. And in a lot of ways, it is a page turner because of all the names that we've been familiar with for 5, 6, 7 years. Tanner Morgan, Marin. They're gone. And so you have this whole new crop of either transfers or younger players that are getting their chance to kind of step into those leading roles. But I don't think it should be viewed as a rebuild. I don't know that in college sports anymore that word exists with the portal. Because you don't have to start over with a bunch of freshmen and say, okay, we're going to let them learn on the job for a couple years, and then we're going to be good 3 years down the road. No, if you have holes, go out and hit the transfer portal and bring in some grad transfers. And PJ's done that. I mean, you look at brought in a transfer running back, 2 wide receivers, a couple of defensive backs. Areas where they were weak or had holes, he went and got veteran players. And he talked about it. It's like you should be able to, at year 7, even when you have personnel changes with guys who played a lot, not take a gigantic step back. Now, the schedule, I mean, there's no way around it. It's a tough schedule. I mean, it's the second hardest schedule in the country. You add Ohio State, Michigan, you're at Iowa, you're at North Carolina with Drake May, who probably is going to be the number 2 pick in the NFL draft in the spring. It's a tough schedule. And so, and you're relying on a bunch of unknowns, but I like the quarterback, Ethan McManus. I feel like he has a chance to be pretty special. He's going to have his low moments this year, but like every young quarterback does, there are going to be times where he makes a bad mistake. But I think when you look at his physical talent, I think it's all there. When you look at the wide receivers they brought in, it just sets up to me that for the first time in the Fleck era, we're going to see them really emphasize the passing game because they don't have the they don't have the bell cow running back that they're going to rely on to run 25 straight times. I mean, this is going to have to be an offense that's built around the quarterback.
And when you get to a certain point, when you've established your program to a certain point, your down years should be 7 or 8 wins, not 4 wins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the line you've got to draw is like, okay, yeah, maybe we're not going to compete at Minnesota, talking from their program perspective, for a Big Ten championship every year, but when you're down a little bit or regrouping, or you didn't, you lost some players, you kind of in a transition a little bit, you shouldn't go down to 4 or 5 wins. You should stay above a certain watermark.
I agree. Like you're still going to be competitive. You might not win the close games that you might have won otherwise, but you shouldn't be in a situation where, okay, this is a 3-win team, and then you're hoping to make a big leap next year. I think they're beyond that. But there are just unknowns when you have a first year, and I still think Calic Manis, I look at him as a first year quarterback, even though he played in 3 games which was good. It helped him with the experience, but this is the first time it's his team and you're the starter every week. Yeah. So, but I agree. I mean, the recruiting, I've been to 2 practices, fall camp. I look at them athletically. I mean, they have young guys there that look like they recruited well. Now you just have to develop them, and the transfers clearly will help them. You got a couple NFL players. Brevin Spanford is going to be one of the best tight ends in the country. He'll be an NFL player. Tyler Nubin's going to be one of the best safeties in the country. He came back. So you have some high-end talent there. Now it's just these guys that were maybe backups.
Yeah.
Or play smaller roles. They're going to have to be the starters and play, a lot of those major roles. And so we'll see how they do. But I just feel like structurally with where their defense, what they have and what they're doing recruiting. And now that I feel like they have a physically really gifted quarterback, they're in a good spot. It's just, when you're playing Ohio State, Michigan in the same year and going to Iowa and Wisconsin, that's the crazy thing, Mike, in the Big Ten West. And this would be we think the final year of the Big Ten West, all that could change with adding Oregon and Washington if that changes their thinking back. But 4 new coaches, and every team has a new quarterback in the Big Ten West.
It's amazing.
So it's like there's a lot to prove and a lot to be answered just in this division because you don't know what these coaches are going to bring and the quarterbacks, first-year quarterbacks, it's hard to know like what the book on them is.
Maybe we need to go to 3 divisions of 6 teams each, and we'll call them legends, leaders, and losers.
Yeah. Well, I do think, to me, if you have 18 teams, I guess you could have 2 divisions of 9, but I just think this is trending to get to 20 schools, and then you could have 4 5-team divisions or pods, however you want to phrase it. And then if you did that, you could have, each division winner advances to your own little playoff. You have a semifinals, and then you have to go to a championship game at the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
That makes too much sense. It makes too much sense.
Jeez. So that's how you're going to get to the Rose Bowl. There you go.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we'll see how the season plays out. It's a little over a week away from starting. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see if PJ can resist the urge to run it all the time. Now that he's got the quarterback that can do a little bit more, I want to see if he's really going to be true to this idea that we think is going to happen, that they're going to throw more.
I agree. And lastly, we've seen him in the past when things go not well with the passing game, either drops or interceptions or whatever. He just shuts it off and says, we're going to run the ball and win the game.
Yep.
Like, do not do that. You can't do that this year. I mean, you got to develop Ethan Kalik-Manis, and I hope they will.
Yeah.
My gut says that we're going to see a different offense, but PJ could prove me wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Chip, appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother.
Good conversation with Chip, and like I said at the beginning with the Mark Coyle stuff, this was not like a Mark Coyle is leaving. I don't get the sense that he's going anywhere. This is more an opportunity to have a thought exercise or an evaluation point of what he's done in these 7 years at Minnesota. What's another school might look at and say, okay, this is someone we might be interested in, and also just to say, hey, what if he did leave? What kind of position would that leave Minnesota in? And again, I don't think any of that is imminent. More of a point or a marker when this USC stuff came up to kind of evaluate and take a look at all of that. And a chance to talk to Chip about football, too. I love talking football with Chip, Gophers football. I'm interested about this season, and I think the biggest point that I wanted to make, and I think we made during that segment, was even if you are in kind of this rebuild mode or in a year where you've lost some known names like Tanner Morgan, Mo Ibrahim, things like that, in order to be a good program, the kind of program PJ Fleck wants to have, your down years, your quote-unquote down years, are the years where you might not be, gearing up. You might not have the veterans at the spots or the known commodities at all the spots. You still have to be good in those years to maintain yourself. You can't dip down, outside of bowl eligibility, things like that in those years. That's important to a winning program. Sustain yourself 7 or 8 wins in those years instead of being all the way down there. So I think that's an important lesson for the Gophers this year, even with a tough schedule. Don't fall all the way down there, because that's where you start to have the slippage. That's where recruits look at you and say, "Oh, you went 5 and 7. That's I don't want to come play there." You start to lose some of that faith in the program. Got to go 7 and 5, 8 and 4 in scenarios like that, and then build to those 10 and 2, 11 and 1 type of seasons where you are a true competitor for bigger and better things. Let's finish with the cooler. Crazy story, espionage almost style in the NBA. The Knicks are suing the Raptors, we found out Monday, saying that members of the Raptors and a former Knicks employee, reading from an ESPN story, illegally procured, quote, then disclosed proprietary information, saying that the Knicks say that a former employee who now works for the Raptors, when they were courting him to join their team in this summer, that he sent like thousands of files of Raptors proprietary information, thousands of files of Knicks proprietary information to the Raptors, and that the Knicks are using, or that the Raptors are using this for some sort of edge. It's a wild story. Go to ESPN.com and read it. But basically accusing them of basically stealing all sorts of information. The Knicks accusing the Raptors of stealing all sorts of information through this employee who was changing teams. And I want to see how this plays out, because we've seen this in other sports where teams have stolen information from other teams, and it does not usually end well if they are able to prove it. So go check out that story. That caught my eye as I was reading on Monday night, and I went back to it this morning as well. that will do it for me today. I think Jeff Day will join me on Wednesday's show to talk Gophers volleyball. And plenty of good stuff later this week, too. Expecting to have Adrian Heath, Minnesota United manager, on the show as well. So hope you stick around and enjoy that. Stay cool today. Until tomorrow, I'm Michael Rand. Back at it then.